Hello, welcome to MJR RPG. The following is a review of the Japanese Call of Cthulhu scenario Cloud Jaws, Hell's Fleet, or Cloud Jozu, Jigoku no Kantai. Written by Studio Arkham's Nanamine Kizashi, published online by KADOKAWA as part of the Tales of Nanafushi project. As always, the first chunk of this review will be largely spoiler-free, while the second half will be full of spoilers, so I will warn off any players before then. I ran the scenario during the A Weekend with Good Friends convention 2025, and one of the players, Morgan Hua, wrote a review of the scenario in session, which you can read on his blog, 21st Century Philosopher. Link in the show notes. In short, this is an absolute madhouse of a scenario. Slightly rigid in places, but easy enough to massage into more freeform B-movie craziness. Cloud Jaws is part of Studio Arkham's, published by KADOKAWA, Tales of Nanafushi project, of short, easy-to-run, and online-focused scenarios set in the shared mythos setting of Nanafushi City. When I ran this scenario, along with Obikiri Bridge and Child Replay for the Weekend with Good Friends convention, a half dozen of the Tales of Nanafushi scenarios were on sale in a bundle. That bundle is unfortunately no longer available, but the individual scenarios can all be purchased on Booth or TALTO, and more have been released in the past few months. While many of the other Tales of Nanafushi scenarios are collaborations between Studio Arkham writers and non-TTRPG horror creators, Cloud Jaws was written solely by Nanamine Kizashi, writer also of the wonderfully weird cartoon reanimation from Bibliotech 13. Cloud Jaws is fully devoted to its B-horror premise, and while firmly in the action survival spectrum of Call of Cthulhu scenarios, it's also one of the few I've seen that is also a disaster scenario. The disaster is flying sharks. That's barely a spoiler. Look at the title, you know what you're getting into. Despite how goofy it all is, I was surprised by how fresh it felt, in a way, as I hadn't really run a pure disaster scenario yet. It seems like a fairly simple idea, just toss some rubbery monsters at a city, prepare some flashy set pieces, plop some colorful survivors around for the investigators to deal with, and let the chaos unfold. That is largely what Cloud Jaws does, though with bumper lanes a bit too firmly attached. Lowering them to allow more organic player choice isn't particularly difficult, but it does mean a bit of extra work for the keeper. The scenario is extremely goofy. Cloud Jaws doesn't use Pulp Cthulhu, as Pulp hadn't been released in Japan yet when this was written. Instead, it uses the Japanese-only 6th edition supplement Cthulhu Horror Show, which is appropriately made to turn Call of Cthulhu into a B-horror movie game. I don't have that book, and I likely won't for a while given how expensive it is now, though it is available digitally through a subscription on KADOKAWA's weird little Call of Cthulhu app. But a small selection of the applicable rules updated for 7th edition are helpfully included with the scenario. The best add-on rule is the quite horribly named Sacrificial Cats. The cats are NPCs whose entire purpose is to die in the place of an investigator, or if a player just wants one to die for whatever reason. Once during a scenario, each player can plant a flag on one of the cats. The keeper then conjures up some way for the cat to die as soon as possible. In most cases, this is similar to the luck spent to not die rule from Pulp Cthulhu, I don't remember what the actual rule is called, with whatever horrible fate the investigator was going to suffer instead being soaked up by the unfortunate cat NPC. But players could come up with more creative uses, like saving other NPCs, distracting baddies, etc., etc. The main PDF is 15 pages, including maps, illustrations, NPC portraits, and more stat blocks for different flying sharks than you would expect. Among the many other included files is the aforementioned Mini Cthulhu Horror Show supplement, as well as the images as individual files for virtual tabletop use, as well as a handful of extra virtual tabletop specific goodies like NPC stats or Kokofolia, which is the main Japanese virtual tabletop. And portraits of the NPCs with different facial expressions. Uniquely for many recently official Japanese scenarios, there are 4 pre-generated investigators included. They usually have none, and they are just wonderfully perfect for this scenario. There's the straight man family-focused office worker who wants to save the world to keep his daughter safe, a lifeguard whose entire existence revolves around guarding life, a job hopper with all manner of bizarre skills, and of course, the Italian pizza chef. They come with some basic backstory elements and a little goofy tagline, and they all do a fine job of getting the player into the hammy mindset. It is quite a fighty scenario. The text does acknowledge this in places and suggests fudging or moving things along, and I do think that is absolutely necessary to keep any semblance of pacing. There will be many fights with sharks, and some of them can get extremely elaborate. There are special rules for some of the set pieces to ease things along, and for the most part, they actually work pretty well. Some keepers and players could get annoyed with the extra guardrails and mechanics, but for what the scenario is trying to do, it simply wouldn't really work with straight BRP rules. Cloud Jaws is overall probably the silliest scenario for Call of Cthulhu I've run, and it was glorious. If your table is in the very specific mood of wanting a goofy B-movie scenario, Cloud Jaws is exactly that. Cloud Jaws, I've said that too many times now, is available digitally on Booth and TALTO. It is only in Japanese, but being a PDF, your machine translator of choice should get it in a close enough to runnable state. The following section is full of spoilers. If you're a player or just don't want to know what you're getting into, I would suggest stopping here. As written, Cloud Jaws is a linear series of locations with fairly heavy scene direction. This obviously fits with the B-movie theme, and some of the scene directions are very fun. I particularly enjoy one spot where all the NPCs pause for the investigators to make a speech, and the text also takes a pause to state in bold, "This scene is very important." Very cute. The climactic battle is similarly laid out in a sort of minigame fashion with tables to roll on and a set ending, but it is one hell of an ending. For those not wanting a strict scene-to-scene through line, the scenario can likely be opened up quite easily while still maintaining most of its set pieces. Without changing anything, the general structure is as follows. The investigators are at a beach and meet the sacrificial cat NPCs, in a very silly and fun scene with them popping in one after the other. Then Cloud riding sharks attack. The party inevitably flees to one of the only nearby structure, a marine research facility. There they find another friendly NPC, learn a bit more about the threat they're facing. Sharks flying in clouds! Get attacked again, then find an SUV to escape to the fishing cooperative facility down the road, fighting off some more sharks on the drive over. There they find some fishermen NPCs, get some equipment, get a glimpse of the real threat, an even bigger flying cloud shark, and learn about an old lady up on the hill who knows how to defeat the demon shark. The party meets the old lady in a silly little scene. The secret method to stop the demon shark isn't a mystical ritual or an ancient talisman, it's blowing up the thing's head. Then they head back to the cooperative to prepare. The final scene is a mad rush to the demon shark Cloud in a helicopter, fighting off sharks or other investigators assisting in speedboats below. Without having to change too much, the simplest way to open up the scenario is to place the investigators' starting position midway between the marine research facility and the fishing cooperative, allowing the investigators to flee to either one. They also see the old lady in the opening scene, so the keeper could allow them to try fleeing to the mountain they saw her disappear into, rather than going to the other two locations, though under heavy attack by sharks all the way. The fishing cooperative and the old lady are both needed for the investigators to face off against the demon shark, but the marine facility doesn't actually have that all that much to offer if it isn't the first location visited, so a keeper could relocate some of the extra shark repellent devices that are in the cooperative to the research facility to entice the investigators to go there. With that fairly simple change, the players can be allowed to freely move about the three locations, or flee into the city if the keeper really feels like letting them completely off the hook until the demon shark eventually kills everyone. While the scenario has a lot of built-in combat, I would recommend, and to an extent the scenario itself recommends, to keep things fluid and quick rather than get bogged down in slap fights between the beefy investigators and the spongy sharks. The Cthulhu Horror Show rules emphasize improvised weapons, so I was happy to allow the players to come up with inventive ways to fight off the sharks. There are nigh infinite sharks. There's no real harm in letting the investigators have whatever powerful nonsense weapons they want. At the same time, the sacrificial cats can also be used as backup investigators, assuming the players didn't sacrifice them, or any of the more important NPCs, so keepers shouldn't be too worried about pulling punches and letting Investigator 2 get chomped. Cloud Jaw stands up there with another of Nanamine's scenarios, the lovely cartoon reanimation, of some of the more bizarre Japanese scenarios I've run, and this one in particular is about as pulpy and nonsensical scenario for Call of Cthulhu as I've ever seen. I'm quite glad to have given it a run, and I'm looking forward to having an opportunity to do so again. Obviously, it has not that much genuine horror in it, but the pure joy of it is infectious. Any scenario that ends with a gargantuan shark appearing to eat the sun gets a big old thumbs up in my book. Oops, big spoilers, but you're reading the spoiler section, so whatever. Cloud Jaws, again, is available digitally on Booth and TALTO. It is only in Japanese, but being a PDF, your machine translator of choice should get it to a workable state. Thank you for listening. As always, credit to Cryochamber for the use of their album, Cthulhu. Until next time, have a good one. This obviously does fit with the Boo movie theme. I can't say B movie. Boo movie.